Exposed. 7 spine-chilling motel secrets that will haunt you forever. Uncover the sinister truths. Mary was desperate. Tired of the unending chaos of being a single mother in Maplewood, she booked a weekend escape at the Willow Haven Inn, a quaint roadside motel that lured her in with whispers of nostalgia and innocence. Little did she know, advancing along the flower-lined path to the vintage sign would lead her into a nightmare. As they settled in, the peeling wallpaper caught her eye, odd stains swirling in patterns resembling outstretched hands, grasping for freedom. Her heart raced, hips tingling with the prickling sensation of being watched. The dim lights flickered, casting eerie shadows, creaking walls echoed her thoughts, filling her with a dread she couldn't shake off. It's just stress, she reassured herself. The kids, blissfully unaware, bounced around, their laughter blending with unease that rolled through Mary like a dark wave. The night crept in steadily, and an unsettling thud resonated from the adjacent room. Mary strained to hear over the whisper of words drifting through the thin walls, rising and falling like ghosts trapped in time. Panic bubbled up in her chest, but she tried to drown it with thoughts of the break she so desperately needed. Seconds felt like hours, until a soft knock jolted her. Peering through the peephole, her breath caught. It was Richard, a familiar face from her neighborhood, grinning with a disquieting ease. "I noticed you were here, just checking in," he said, his words dripped with an intent that sent her skin crawling. Those teeth glimmered in the twilight, a sickly sweet smile that felt like a noose tightening around her. With dread clawing at her mind, Mary shut the door, heart pounding. What was he doing here? This felt wrong, like a violation. Protecting her children took priority, so she clung to their soft, innocent forms asleep on the bed, completely trusting the world around them. But as shadows flickered across the room, each creak seemed like a warning. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that is happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Mary's fingers trembled as she picked up a half-torn brochure left on the bedside table, detailing the town's haunted past. The words vanished, sacrificed, and dark secrets jumped off the page, clasping her heart in icy fear. What had she walked into? Her phone buzzed, and with it, her heart dropped a message from an unknown number. "I know you're here." Panic clawed through her, pushing her feet into action. She couldn't wait for morning, they had to leave. Glancing back at the sleeping forms of her children, their innocence a stark contrast to the growing terror wrapping around her throat. Just as she gathered the courage to run, darkness swallowed the room. The lights flickered violently, plunging her into a suffocating black. Another knock reverberated through the door, harder, more insistent. The sound rattled the frame, pulling her further into the grasping dread. Which way to turn? Each second seemed to stretch into eternity, shadows swirling around her. What had she awakened in Willow Creek? The terror closing in felt like a living thing, and it wanted her family. Mary pressed herself against the cold wall, every instinct screaming for her to run. The harsh knock echoed again, splintering her thoughts. "Mom?" A small voice croaked from the bed, the innocent question coming from her eldest son, Andy, waking from sleep. The world had become a cacophony of dread, wrapping tighter around her with every breath she took. "Sure, honey. It's okay," she whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. But okay felt like a lie. The flames of concern in Andy's eyes ignited her already frantic heart. He could sense it too, the heaviness in the air that whispered of danger. Without another thought, Mary snatched her phone, the dim light barely illuminating the grotesque stains on the walls, twisting into grotesque shapes under her trembling fingers. She now understood those patterns. They weren't simply decoration. They were wretched reminders of the motel's dark history. Every fiber of her screamed to leave. The unknown number still lurked in her messages, taunting her. Who was it? And how did they know where she was? She moved towards the door, heart pounding loud enough to drown out the sinister whispers seeping through the paper-thin walls. Another frantic knock pulsed through her dread, causing sweat to bead on her forehead. No, she had to be strong for the kids. Stay quiet, she hissed, her voice barely a whisper, hoping they would understand. Mary edged to the door, heart racing. Peering through the peephole again, her stomach dropped. It wasn't Richard this time. A face, ghostly pale and hollow-eyed, stared back with an unsettling grin. It was a stranger, one Mary had never seen before, but that smile split her heart open with fear. "Let me in!" the voice bellowed, reverberating with an unnatural intensity. "I'm here to help." Help? She didn't believe him. Sudden noises erupted next door, a scuffle, then a scream that echoed through the walls like shattering glass. It was chilling, a raw sound of terror that sank into her bones. "Mom!" Andy's voice trembled. "What's happening?" Her fingers shook as she backed away, unsure of how to protect them from this escalating nightmare. She turned to look for her daughter Lily, but in the moment of panic, her little girl had vanished from sight. "Lily?" Panic gripped her throat. "Lily! Here!" The tiny voice came from the bathroom, where Mary had left her moments before. Relief momentarily lifted the weight of dread until the lights flickered, plunging them into darkness again. "Stay close!" she shouted, stumbling towards the bathroom. Yet, as she rushed forward, she felt something grip her ankle. Looking down, she saw the outline of a shadow creeping from under the bed. It coiled around her feet, cold as ice, pulling her down. Screams erupted from the kids as everything around them twisted, the walls seemingly closing in. The shadow slithered up her leg, pulling her to the floor, and in the split second before everything went black, she thought she heard Richard's laugh, mingling with the cries of her children. As the darkness consumed her, a mocking whisper echoed through the suffocating silence. "You've come to join us, Mary." She was lost, swallowed by terror and uncertainty. How could she escape a nightmare that seemed to beckon her with every step? Then the door creaked open, a silhouette standing there, backlit by the ghostly moonlight seeping through the window. Mary's heart raced. Was it a savior, or another cruel trick from this twisted motel? The figure stepped forward, and with dread pooling in her stomach, she realized she might have inadvertently unleashed something far worse. What awaited them now? And would they ever leave this hellish place? The figure moved closer, the moonlight revealing more details, shadows draped across a face obscured by a hood, hair a tangled mess cascading down. Mary held her breath, every heartbeat felt like a countdown. "Who are you?" she managed to croak, loathing the tremor in her voice. "Someone who knows about the motel," the figure replied, voice muffled but laced with an eerie familiarity, like ashes that used to be fire. "And about you, Mary?" Mary's breath caught in her throat, and dread sank deeper as she clutched her phone, willing the battery to hum to life. Fear gripped her spine as the darkness pulled at her again, as though it were alive, searching for her. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice shaking as she glanced back at her children. Their frightened eyes stared wide, reflecting the horror of the moment. The figure stepped closer, the moon illuminating swirling tattoos on pale-skin, symbols she instinctively knew were not meant to be seen. With every raised fingerprint and iron-black ink, the shadowed woman spoke. "They're here, Mary. They want you to know, and they're getting impatient." The whispers escalated, undulating through the room, wrapping around her like a snake coiling around its prey. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsing with frustration. She felt herself overwhelmed by the weight of reality crumbling around her. "What do you mean?" Mary felt anger rising beneath the fear, as if she were a caged animal. "You have to tell me." "There's no time." The woman's eyes glinted under the hood, and a faint smile danced on her lips. "The spirits here have designs, and you're entwined in their fate." Suddenly, the power surged back, lights flickering on with a deafening hum. Mary squinted against the luminous glare as the stranger's visage warped. Her features twisted, melding into something grotesque, until she resembled the smiling face outside the door, pale and horrific. "No!" Mary screamed, backing away but finding the wall solid behind her. The shadows surged again, this time hungry, sinister tendrils reaching for her children. "Mom!" Andy shouted, clutching Lily close as they huddled together. Mary lunged forward, heart racing. The strange woman reached out a hand, slick and shadowy, whispering something too low for Mary to catch. "Get away!" Mary snapped, desperation injecting adrenaline into her limbs. She dashed toward the children. "Get back!" But as she reached them, the room flipped. The shadows swarmed, twisting around her ankles, then twisting higher, creeping like a living fog. She could feel the cold dread clutching at her heart, each frantic pulse echoing louder than the last. The woman grinned, a wicked smile stirring dread deep in Mary's gut. "Join us," she hissed softly, as if sharing a secret. The shadows danced eagerly at the edges, drenching the air with whispers and cries, an endless chant of haunting voices. Mary dare not look away, eyes locked on the ghostly woman who loomed closer, the scent of decay crawling into her nostrils. "You must choose, Mary. Your children or your past." The shadows lunged, tangling with her legs as her resolve began to wane. Could she truly escape this nightmare? Suddenly, a surge of noise broke through the door slamming open, revealing the chaotic world outside, where screams echoed and the night howled with terror. A shadow behind the woman shifted, forming into something grotesque and misshapen, frantically clawing its way toward freedom. In that split second, realization left her breathless. If they stayed here much longer, they would become part of the dark. The truths of this motel, the secrets woven into its walls, were the very reasons they had to leave. But could she trust that the door was the way out, or just another trap? "Run!" Mary screamed, propelling herself toward the children, determination igniting her courage. "We have to go now." The shadows convulsed, angry, grasping for them as the woman launched into a furious scream. Heavy dread gripped Mary's chest. They weren't safe yet. As they darted through the door and into the night, the world blurred beyond them. The echoes of the motel and the dark promises it held lingered, taunting them still. But as Mary turned to face their escape, a chilling voice followed them, whispering, "You haven't escaped, only just begun to uncover the horror." They sprinted into the unknown, but the real nightmare was yet to come, where even the darkness had its own fate to fulfill. The shadows clawed at their heels as they plunged into the night, breathless and frantic. Mary turned her head, trying to catch glimpses of the motel behind them. It loomed like a midnight ghoul, its windows glowing eerily as if keeping watch. The whispering voice lingered in her mind, a grating reminder that they weren't truly free. "Mom, what is happening?" Andy's voice trembled, deep with fear. He grasped Lily tightly, her wide eyes darting back at the darkness, mirroring his own panic. "I don't know," Mary panted, pushing past the worn-out lawn and heading for the road. "We just need to keep going. We'll figure it out." The air outside was thick with dread, oppressive like a storm cloud ready to burst. Mary's heart raced, each pounding beat urging her forward. She felt the weight of unseen eyes on her back but fought to keep the terror at bay. They reached the road, breath hitching in Mary's throat. A desolate stretch lay before them, illuminated only by the mournful flickers of failing streetlights. The silence, thick and biting, was menacing, gnawing at her resolve. "Why does it feel like they're still watching us?" Andy whispered, glancing over his shoulder. "Because they are," Mary responded, forcing herself not to shudder. "We just have to keep moving. Don't stop." But doubt gnawed at her mind, making her pulse rise. The shadows from the motel felt like tendrils reaching out, pulling her back into their depths. Like they were calling her home. Yet home was a far thing from what she had left. They trudged on, the oppressive quiet broken only by their haggard breaths. Mary thought of the woman, of the choice she had to make. Her past hung over her like a noose, tightening as she tried to breathe. Could she risk going back? Did she even know what she was running from or to? Suddenly, a cold wind howled, sending chills racing down her spine. The temperature dropped around them, and she could see her breath misting in front of her. It felt unnatural. "What is happening?" Lily whimpered, looking up at her mother with wide, frightened eyes. "Stay close," Mary said through clenched teeth. But as they moved, an eerie sound filled the air, a low, echoing chant that wove through the trees, wrapping around them like a shroud. It was the same unsettling whisper they had heard in the motel, drawing closer, more urgent. Mary pulled the children to her side, her instincts flaring again. "Run!" she commanded, and they sprinted, feet pounding the asphalt, desperation propelling them forward. The chant rose, a cacophony of voices, each whispering her name. Mary, the wind howled as if it carried the very spirits, echoing through the night. Then, without warning, shadows erupted from the trees, pouring onto the road ahead of them. A mass of shifting darkness, swirling and pulling together, forming a silhouette that looked almost human. "What the?" Andy gasped, stopping dead in his tracks. "Keep going!" Mary yelled, panic flooding her veins. She could feel the shadows reaching. They wanted her. But the apparition spoke, a voice drenched in sadness yet commanding. "Mary, you cannot outrun the past." The ground beneath her feet trembled as the figures detached from the mass, their outstretched arms pleading, pulling her towards them. She felt an undeniable connection. Memories flashed before her faces, laughter, a life once lived. The darkness began to whisper her secrets, painting the night with visions she thought were long buried. "No!" she screamed, wrenching away as she felt fingers brush against her arm. They were cold, spectral, echoing with anguish. "I want to go back." The children clung to her, their eyes full of horror, terror mirroring her own. The shadows danced hungrily, their whispers rising in a frenzy, demanding her return. Would she stand her ground or be consumed? "Mom, run! Please!" Andy shouted again, dragging Lily backward, dragging Mary with them. They stumbled back, but every step seemed heavier as the shadows pulled at their presence, longing to ensnare them. Mary took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of strength. The connection felt so real. Could she leave it all behind? She screamed, her voice slicing through the whispers. "I want to be yours." Mary took the children and darted toward the woods, ready to plunge into the unknown. But what waited within, and what price would they pay for trying to escape? The very trees shifted, dark shapes lurking behind the trunks as the chant intensified. Would the forest be their savior, or would it condemn them further? Fingers of darkness reached out, trailing in pursuit, and she could only hope that somewhere deep within, they could find the truth of what was still hidden. The woods closed in around them, suffocating and damp. Trees twisted in unnatural ways, their branches resembling clawed hands reaching for the sky. Each step they took sent a fresh wave of fear coursing through Mary. She was desperate. The shadows were relentless, and their voices were growing louder, urging her to turn back. "Don't look, Mom! Just run!" Andy urged, his voice trembling but firm. Mary grabbed Lily's hand tightly, their fingers entwined as if it would somehow anchor them in reality. They darted deeper into the trees, the ground uneven beneath their feet. The low chant persisted, entwining itself with the rustling leaves, a sinister lullaby beckoning them closer to the malevolent force that sought to reclaim them. "Mom!" Lily cried, her small voice barely audible above the case. "What do they want?" Mary didn't have an answer. She felt the truth unraveling around her, secrets clawing to be heard. "Just keep going," she shouted, pushing through the oppressive weight of the forest. But the shadows prowled, their supplicating cries echoing in the night. "Mary," they whispered, threading through the air. The mere sound of her name made her heart race, a tremor of dread rippling through her veins. With every beat, she could feel home slipping further away. They broke through to a small clearing, moonlight spilling like silver across the ground. Mary skidded to a halt, panting, eyes wide. She turned slowly, scanning the trees. "What now?" she breathed. Then came a rustling from behind, low and sinister. Dark figures slipped between the trees, gliding just out of reach, shifting and changing as if they were made of the very darkness that cloaked them. The shadows whispered, a cacophony of longing and grief. "You belong to us." "No. We don't belong to anyone." Mary shot back, her voice fierce, but uncertainty gnawed at her resolve. "Mom!" Andy's quiet shout caught her attention. He pointed to the edge of the clearing. A small, crumbling cabin sat in the shadows, its windows broken, like empty eyes staring into the void. A hopeful glimmer arose in Mary's sprouting fears. Could the cabin offer sanctuary? Over there, she urged, moving toward it. The children followed closely, their feet dragging with a mixture of exhaustion and trepidation. As they approached, a chill enveloped them, and a strange stillness fell over the clearing. Mary hesitated at the door, her hand hovering over the tarnished doorknob. Was this a needed refuge, or the entrapment of another ghostly hold? What if they're in there too? Lily trembled, stepping back. Mary shook her head sharply, trying to push through the growing anxiety that gripped her. We have to try, honey. We don't have a choice. She swung the door open and a sharp groan echoed through the air, sending a shiver down her spine. Inside, darkness reigned, thick and choking. The beam from her phone illuminated dust motes swirling through the air, catching flashes of the old furniture dripping with despair and time. The corners seemed to writhe with shadows of their own, lurking and waiting. Mom, I don't like this, Andy whispered, edging closer to her. His small body pressed tightly against her leg, a fragment of warmth in an icy realm. Mary inhaled sharply. We need to hide. Quickly! She ushered the kids inside, but the door creaked ominously as it swung closed behind them, almost sealing them in. As they tucked away in the musty corner of the cabin, a sudden chill crept over them. The whispers outside crescendoed to a shriek, a tempest of voices swirling in desperate need. The shadows converged, pooling near the edges of the cabin, desperate for entry. Mom! Andy cried, they're right outside. Mary's heart raced. Would their fleeting sanctuary hold against the ruthless darkness, or were they merely delaying the inevitable? As the shadows traced the boundary of their refuge, a figure emerged just beyond the splintered door, its outline stark against the thick blackness. Mary called softly, with an echo laced with longing. Join us. What was this being? Could it truly pull her back to the past? Panic surged within her like a torrent. The whispering intensified, demanding her submission. Brace yourselves, she shouted, clutching the children tightly as the air thrummed around them, teetering between salvation and despair. But what awaited her on the other side? Were the shadows closing in for a final confrontation, or would the cabin reveal the long-buried secrets meant to shatter their reality? And then the door rattled, the figure's hand pressed against the wood, stronger than any resolve they had left. The door quivered as the unseen figure pushed harder. Mary's breath hitched in her throat, her chest tight with fear. What do we do? Andy whimpered, clutching her side. Lily trembled beside him, eyes wide with terror. Stay quiet, Mary whispered, her heart pounding. She couldn't let fear trap them. They had to think. The door rattled again, more insistent now. It groaned as if the very spirit of the cabin were protesting the intruder. Shadows twisted and warped outside, their grotesque forms undulating like smoke. Each pulse of darkness seemed to claw at the door, curling inwards, looking for a way to consume them. Mom, I see them, Lily pointed, her voice a mere whisper. Mary followed her gaze just as a flicker of movement caught her attention. Something dark slithered across the threshold, creeping like a living creature, an extension of the figure pressing on the door. Don't look, don't look! Mary insisted, but curiosity anchored her eyes. The shadows flickered like candle flames, revealing fragments of faces, wretched, hollowed expressions filled with vehemence. They were once human, now twisted by something insidious. Mary, the voice came again, softer now, hauntingly melodic, prodding at the edges of her mind. Join us, come back, get back! She shouted, straining against the fear binding her feet. You're not real! But the shadows lowered, withdrawing uneasily, allowing a moment's reprieve. The figure outside hesitated. Mary's spirit surged with false hope, just for a heartbeat. Where was the escape route? Where was safety? She glanced toward a narrow window, the only other exit in the room. Follow me, she breathed, fingers entwined with her children's. They bolted toward the window, but the shadows stirred again, restless, coiling tighter around the door frame. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, swelling into a cacophony of accusal. They filled the air like a storm, a tempest of emotions that threatened to drown her beneath their weight. Mom! "They're closing in," Andy cried, his voice breaking. "We must get out." Mary gritted her teeth, fighting the suffocating urge to submit. "On 3, 1, 2, 3. They lunged for the window, but just as Mary reached the frame, an ice-cold hand shot out of the darkness, grasping her wrist with a force that burned like frostbite. Mary screamed, struggling against it, but the grip tightened, anchoring her in place. "Come home," the figure rasped, words dripping with ancient sorrow. The air thickened, turning sour with regret. It was a sound that twisted her insides, pulling at long-buried memories she dared not confront. "No!" she screamed, fighting harder. Then something in her snapped. "You don't own me!" With a surge of desperation, she twisted her wrist free and yanked the kids toward the window. She shoved the frame open and they scrambled through, landing hard on the cold, unwelcoming forest floor. "Run!" she urged, not looking back. A primal instinct kicked in, propelling them into the heart of the woods once more, where the shadows thrashed around them, angry and insatiable. Mary could still hear the whispers chasing after them, echoing in the night air. "You can't escape." Just as they reached the canopy's edge, a familiar sensation choked her anew, a parasitic heaviness that clawed at her consciousness. A flash of imagery broke through, fragments of joy and pain battling within. Then a low growl pierced the night. Something dark and furious materialized from the darkness, chasing them with relentless fury. It moved swiftly, a monstrous silhouette that sent tremors of horror coursing through her. "Faster!" she yelled, the sound devolving into a primal scream as the night devoured all around them. Every breath felt like a betrayal, every heartbeat a warning. But what awaited them in the darkness? Would they finally break free of the shadows, or were they rushing toward a fate worse than they could imagine? One question hung heavy in the air: what was the truth that lay buried, waiting to consume them whole? Branches whipped against Mary's face as they tore through the underbrush, the forest alive with the din of their pursuer. Each step felt like a countdown, every rustle and snap echoed like a clock ticking towards a final reckoning. Lily stumbled, dragging Andy down with her. I can't keep up." Tears streamed down her cheeks, reflecting the sheer panic. Mary didn't hesitate. She scooped both children into her arms, their small bodies fitting snugly against her. "Hold on," she grunted, fear lending her strength as she sprinted forward. Behind them, the growl morphed into a horrendous roar that echoed through the trees, reverberating like deep thunder. The shadows surged, taking on form and substance, thrumming with life. Mary felt the rush of cold air billow around her, a chilling whisper wrapping around her heart, beckoning her to look back. "No! Keep going!" Each tree was a sentinel, twisted and gnarled, their limbs clawing at the sky, desperate to contain the horror that chased. Mary's breaths came in sharp gasps, burning in her lungs. The forest felt alive, watching, waiting, as if it were part of the entity that hunted them. She barreled through brush and bramble, until a small clearing opened up before them. The moonlight pulled on the ground, illuminating a cracked stone well. Its edges were smooth, inviting, and yet there was something off about it, something that wound around her gut with unease. "Down there! It could be a hiding place!" Andy shouted, his eyes darting to the shadows closing in. Mary hesitated, her heart hammering loud and insistent. "What if it's worse?" The growl came again, closer, snaking through the trees. The whispers crescendoed, wrapping in a haunting embrace, twisting her thoughts. "Mom! We have to!" Lily screamed, panic overwhelming her as she pointed at the well. "No more time to think." "Fine. Get in," Mary commanded. She lowered them both in, and as they clung to each other at the bottom, she heard the rustle of leaves above. The horror surged into the clearing like an unchained beast. The darkness pressed in, bathed in shadows that seemed to weave into one another, forming a singular, terrifying shape. Mary squeezed into the narrow opening of the well. It was damp and claustrophobic, laden with the earthy scent of decay. She pushed her children deeper into the darkness, praying the shadows would overlook them. "Stay quiet," she whispered, but even she could hear her heart thudding like a war drum, loud enough to betray them. Moments passed, an eternity wrapped in suffocating silence. Her breathing slowed, but the whispers grew wild above them, weaving killer tales of despair and longing. You can't hide from us, we're a part of you. Then a sudden stillness. No growls, no whispers. Mary slowly lifted her head, heart racing. Had it lost them? But a dull thud interrupted her thoughts, something heavy landing just outside the well. Panic surged again. Mom? Andy's voice trembled. Shush! She hissed, but the shadows grew thicker outside, darkness spilling into the edges of their sanctuary. It felt as if they were being watched, not just by the unseen figure, but by something older. Something that thrived on subjugation. With trembling hands, Mary pulled out her phone, the screen flickering to life in the darkness. She could barely make out the time, every minute still silent. Until a new voice cut through the dark, a familiar yet distorted echo. Mary, we're waiting for you. The realization washed over her. This was more than a pursuit. It was a homecoming, an invitation wrapped in malice. What do you want? She whispered, her voice brittle. The answer came without words, a cold draft that brushed against her skin, chilling her bones. They were not safe. Not yet. As desperation coiled tighter, Mary knew they had to escape the well, but they'd have to confront whatever lurked above. Could they outsmart it? The shadows seemed to beckon, and just then, a dark hand reached down into the well. Was it the end of their flight, or the beginning of their reckoning? What awaited them in the heart of darkness? The dark hand loomed, fingers curling and twisting, reaching with an insatiable hunger. Mary's breath caught, her heart pounding in her chest like a caged animal desperate to escape. Get back! She hissed, pulling her children closer. They huddled at the bottom of the well, bundled together like treasures tucked away. The walls felt slick, the damp earth crumbling slightly beneath their fingers, like time itself was weakening. From above, the voice coiled around them, oily and dark. Mary, it's been too long. What did it mean? It seeped into her mind like poison. She had to stay focused. She had to protect her kids. Mom, I'm scared, Andy whispered, a tremor shaking his tiny frame. I know, baby. But we can't show fear, she replied, trying to project strength she didn't feel. The fingers withdrew momentarily, and Mary dared to hope. But a heavy thud echoed again, almost like a heartbeat, reverberating against the stones. It returned, grasping once more, clawing downwards as if determined to pull them into whatever abyss it served. Please, Lily whimpered. The sound melted Mary's heart. They were not just hiding, they were alive inside this chilling horror. What does it want with you? I don't know, Mary admitted softly, eyes darting around. But we can't wait. We have to climb back up. No. Andy clutched her arm, terror etched in his wide eyes. What if it's up there? What if it got in? The thought paralyzed her. If they left this cramped sanctuary, would they encounter the terror outside? Or would they plunge deeper into darkness and despair? Listen. Mary squeezed their hands. We have to trust each other. We'll do this as one. Ready? With determination bouncing between them, she edged her way up, hands scrabbling against the walls, urging her body upward. They could feel the cold air rushing down as they strained against gravity, pushing towards a flicker of hope above. Then, another growl erupted, unsettling and fierce. It vibrated through the earth, announcing its presence again. Your blood calls to me. Mary shivered, terror curling in the pit of her stomach. That voice, she recognized it. It was a voice from her childhood, one she thought she had buried alongside dark memories she would rather forget. The memories flooded back with a shocking clarity. The woods were not only a backdrop of danger, it was also a chapter from her past. Mom! Please! Lily's voice broke her thoughts, panic mounting. They were still stuck in the well, the monster above biding its time, waiting for their move. Climb! They scrambled, the sound of skittering nails against wood echoing harshly, a reminder that the shadows weren't finished with them. Finally, Mary felt her fingertips grasp the edge of the well's stone lip. She hoisted herself up with every ounce of energy, and the moonlight burst upon them, blinding and beautiful. But as she pulled her children up, despair washed over her. The clearing was transformed, once a place of refuge, now a domain of shadows. The trees twisted grotesquely, their branches like claws in the moonlight. The familiar growl morphed into a manic chuckle, dark and echoing, spreading the stench of decay. "Welcome back, Mary!" Instinct screamed for her to turn, to flee. Instead, she locked eyes with the figure emerging from the shadows. It was a silhouette, dark and looming, but Mary recognized those eyes, watchful, predatory. It was just the beginning. She had come home to confront demons she thought she'd escaped, and now they threatened to consume everything she held dear. "Run!" She shoved the kids forward as the figure lunged, but would they outrun fate? As they sprinted into the forest, their path was illuminated by fleeting beams of moonlight, flickering like the hope that was dwindling within. What awaited them in the depths of the woods? Would they find light, or was the darkness intent on claiming them all once again? Branches cracked under their feet as they fled, the echo of their hurried breaths filling the night. Mary dashed forward, pulling her children with her, hearts racing, minds clouded with terror. She was sure the figure was behind them, every rustle of the leaves sounding like it was just inches away. Each step took them further into the blackness, away from the well and the past they had thought safely buried. "Over there!" Mary pointed to a narrow path veering off to the left. The moonlight revealed a dimly lit route flanked by twisted trees, their trunks gnarled and sinister. She didn't know where it led, but it felt like their only hope, their only chance to escape the unseen predator prowling in the night. As they entered the narrow passage, the air grew colder. Mary could see their breath, frosty clouds dissolving into the void, and panic began to swell in her chest. "Stay close," she urged, glancing behind. The oppressive darkness seemed to pulse, quivering as if it was alive, determined to swallow them whole. Mom Andy's voice trembled with a sob. "I can't feel my legs, were almost there, honey," she said, though she'd never been more uncertain. They were deeper in the woods than she remembered, and every shadow that shifted sent jolts of dread through her spine. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the silence behind them. Mary whipped around, fear coursing through her veins. The figure had broken free, its movements quick and relentless. "Go!" she shouted, pushing the children ahead. The wild thumping of her heart drowned out the sinister laughter creeping in from every side. As they ran, Mary felt the weight of memories, the years spent trying to outrun the stories whispered in town, the grim things she'd seen and heard. These woods were too familiar, they had witnessed horrors she thought she could forget. An eerie hum filled the air, vibrating her bones. "Mom!" Lily cried, pulling on Mary's arm. The girl's eyes were wide, reflecting the fear creeping into her own heart. "It's getting closer!" Mary advanced, but the path wound deeper into the forest, shadows lengthening as the trees stooped down, their crooked branches reaching out like claws. The laughter returned, sharper and more mocking, blending with the low growls that sent shivers creeping down her back. "Stick together," she insisted, as she turned away from the phantoms of the past clawing their way back into her mind. Their escape was tied to the present. The shadows around them were alive and hungry, and with every instinct screaming, she knew the memories could not be outrun forever. As they stumbled into a small clearing, the ground felt uneven beneath them. Mary barely had time to survey their surroundings before a massive shape emerged from the darkness. Mary, it was a rasping call that slithered through the trees, pulsing with a sinister energy. The children froze, eyes wide, hand gripping their mother tightly. In the clearing stood a dilapidated house, every broken window staring at them like empty eyes. A terror so intimate clawed at her heart, for she recognized it the last place she had seen her father before he vanished into the night. "Mom, we can't go in there," Andy whined, his voice cracking. But the figure loomed closer, the past and the present colliding, each twist in the air suffocatingly familiar. "I have to protect you," she uttered, her voice wavering. The path forward was unclear, but there was no room for hesitation. The house was a gate, maybe even a refuge. Or perhaps it was an enemy cloaked in memories. With determination, she sprinted towards it, pulling her children forward, praying for safety or at least a reprieve. "The darkness can't follow us in there," she whispered, more to herself than them. But would the truth inside prove more dangerous than the shadows stalking her? As they reached the door, it creaked open, inviting yet ominous, a threshold between safety and horror. What lay inside? Would they find answers or awaken more nightmares? The moment hung thick with dread as they crossed the threshold. The moment they stepped inside, a wave of stale air hit them like a slap. Dust motes swirled in the feeble beam of Mary's phone, dancing across the room, illuminated just enough to catch the old furniture strewn haphazardly, decaying and forgotten. The smell of mildew and long-buried memories washed over them, thick and suffocating. Mary, there it was again, a whisper echoed by the walls. Could she really face it all right here? Shadows flickered in corners, teasing the edge of her vision. She needed answers, needed to understand what pulled her here. "Mom, please, can we get out?" Andy whimpered, his voice trembling. Lily stood close, eyes darting around, the fear radiating off them both. Mary clenched her jaw, fighting back the rising tide of panic. "Just a little further," she croaked, though dread gnawed at her insides. The moment felt heavy, panic juxtaposed against a strange sense of nostalgia. Memories tangled in her veins, laughter, love, and the lingering shadows of loss. Could this place hold the key to her nightmare? She moved further inside, the family photos on the wall hanging askew, dust-covered but vivid, capturing moments of happiness that slipped through her fingers like sand. Suddenly, a low rumble reverberated from deep within the house, shaking the walls. "No!" Mary gasped, pulling her children close. It emerged again, a guttural sound filled with rage, seemingly responding to her presence. It was as if the house itself had awakened, resenting their intrusion. "Mom! What is happening?" Andy pressed against her side. Whatever shadow pursued them was close behind. But before she could react, a piercing scream echoed through the halls, haunting and raw. Her heart raced, and she exchanged fearful glances with her children. They had to find safety, yet the old house trembled at their resolve. "Over here!" Mary pointed toward the staircase, the thick shadows gathering on the walls as if beckoning them. The moment they began ascending, the stairs creaked ominously under their weight, each step almost a sentence in a terrifying story. As they reached the top, cold air enveloped them, swirling like restless spirits. The corridor stretched endlessly, doors lining each side, whispering secrets that begged to be uncovered. "Which way?" Lily asked, looking terrified. "Mom, I feel it's coming," Andy said, eyes wide, a sense of urgency overwhelming her. Mary glanced down the darkened corridor as more shadows gathered. "We have to go," she said, urgency roaring in her veins. She chose the door at the end of the hall, pushing it open with a fierce determination. It swung silently, revealing a childless bedroom, the sunlight filtering in through a dusty window, sparks of light illuminating the contents. This room. It was where she spent her last days of innocence. Mary's heart raced, memories flooding back with vivid ease, each recollection an anchor and a tumultuous wave all at once. Pictures of her and her father hung crookedly on the walls, their laughter frozen in time. "Mom? What is this place?" Lily asked, her little voice shaky. It's home," Mary whispered, stepping further inside, a knot of dread mixing with warmth. The past beckoned her, both her father's comforting presence and the darkness that had taken him from her. "And maybe we should leave?" Andy suggested hesitantly, anxiety tinging his voice. Yet Mary couldn't turn away from the shimmering echoes that filled the air like ghosts. This was the heart of her history, the crimes, the lies, all woven between the seconds spent here. "No!" she snapped, then softened. "I mean, we have to face it, we need to understand." Only a thin barrier separated her now from the truth she sought. And there it was, a door at the other side of the room, slightly ajar, emanating a glow that seemed to pulse as if alive. Mary felt a magnetic pull toward it, a silent promise of resolution. "Do we have to go in there?" Andy trembled. "What if it's worse?" Mary bent down to meet his anxious eyes. "We can't run forever. If we're going to end this, it's going to be together." She squeezed his hand, then glanced at Lily, who nodded resolutely. They stepped toward the door, but as they approached, the whispers returned, rising to a furious pitch. You cannot escape, you will face your fears, join us. Mary's heartbeat quickened, and as she pushed the door wider, she was greeted by a darkened void that felt alive with secrets. This is it, she muttered, fear and defiance mixing in her veins. We're going in for you, Dad. With one last breath, they crossed the threshold. Shadows surged, grasping at them like desperate hands. Yet Mary stood firm, determination coursing through her. The truth awaited them, whether it healed or shattered them. Just as the shadows rose for one final attack, she shouted, "We're not afraid." In that pivotal moment, the shadows surrendered, fading before their light, trembling at her resolve. The dark voice fell silent, the memories coalescing into whispers of understanding. As they melded into the light, a soft glow enveloped them, revealing secrets of the past, the stories not of darkness, but of love. Mary felt warmth radiate within her as the shadows dissipated. They had faced the darkness together. In the aftermath, breathing heavily and with tears mingling with relief, Mary turned to her children. "We did it. We are free." Andy and Lily hugged her tightly, their weight anchoring her back into reality. They stepped forward, knowing they had escaped the haunting truths that sought to consume them. The house sighed as if finally released from years of torment, fading into the night behind them. As they emerged into the silver moonlight, Mary held her children a little closer, a healed heart ready to embrace a brighter future. More than shadows had been faced. They carried home with them the love that had existed and the lessons learned. "Let us go home," she whispered, the weight of sorrow lifted. Together they walked forward, leaving the past behind, ready to build a new tomorrow. This was their farewell to the ghosts they had survived. And the promise hung in the air, a haunting reminder of where they'd been, but never to return again. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to support the channel and help feed the algorithm. It makes a difference. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this intense conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this extraordinary journey. True fans know how important it is to show that love and support.